They are the holy grail of all Hollywood memorabilia. Judy Garland's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz, a national treasure worth millions. But once they were thought to be so insignificant, they were destined for the trash. Journey into a peculiar Hollywood underworld and find out what really happened to Judy Garland's ruby slippers. A Hollywood mystery story, next on Treasure. These are the most recognizable shoes in all Hollywood history. They need no explanation. Everyone knows what they are, who wore them, what they mean. They are the indelible icon of a uniquely American fairy tale, an enduring symbol of the power of belief. They are also worth a fortune, which is power in itself. But even more, they are objects of obsession. The Wicked Witch of the West was certainly obsessed by them and possessed by the promise of their power. But the charm and magic of Dorothy's shoes goes far beyond the pages of a book or the scenes of a movie. They have assumed a power of their own that is very real. The fabled shoes are important enough to be on perpetual display at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Every year, upwards of 5 million people visit the National Treasure.
We don't clock individual numbers here, but I can tell you that whenever we've had to take the shoes off for any reason whatsoever, we get irate phone calls, disappointed little girls from all over the country come to see these things. They are without a doubt one of the most popular items on display here.
Visitors are inexplicably drawn to the shoes that carried lost Dorothy along the yellow brick road in search of the fearsome wizard. He would help her get home to Kansas.
I recently got a letter from a little girl who asked me if the shoes still work. And I wrote her back and I said, well, if you mean do we wear the shoes still? No, we don't, because they're fragile and they could fall apart. But if you're asking, are they still magic? I said, well, the magic's always in you.
They're magic, if you believe. First, you have to believe that they're really Judy Garland's ruby slippers. The museum knows they are from the movie, but they don't know whether Judy Garland ever put her feet in this well-worn pair of shoes. The Smithsonian's dilemma is part of a confounding mystery about what really happened to the ruby slippers from MGM's 1939 classic, The Wizard of Oz. Since May 1970, this question has preoccupied countless people who have followed the story from studio backlots and prop houses into a peculiar underworld where the best pieces of Hollywood memorabilia were once up for grabs. What is known is that the Smithsonian's ruby slippers are authentic, but they are not the only pair in existence. And how could this be? Well, the land of Oz is a very different place than the land of Hollywood. In the land of Oz, there was just one pair of magic shoes. But in Hollywood...
As a rule, we had 2 costumes made. When we did a dance number, there was always 2 costumes made.
The reason was simple to any Hollywood insider. If an important costume was damaged during production, they couldn't stop filming until a new costume was made. They had to have extras. Such was the case with Judy Garland's ruby slippers.
They always had a pair immediately ready to go. It wasn't like, oh, well, let's go make a new pair now. No, they made them way ahead of time.
What's more, Judy Garland had a stand-in who also wore the ruby slippers. So how many different pairs did they have? Debbie Reynolds says there were 5 pairs. Or were there 6, as this newspaper headline suggests? Then again, consider this number written inside this authentic ruby slipper. 7 pairs, maybe? All the costume records for The Wizard of Oz were thrown away, so nobody knows for sure how many were actually made. The answer might not seem so important if they weren't worth so much money. Today, the ruby slippers are considered the holy grail of all Hollywood memorabilia, with an estimated value topping $1 million per pair. So how many pairs actually exist? To find out, one must journey back through time to the epic year when the ruby slippers were made. One of Hollywood's great ironies is the very existence of the ruby slippers. Originally, they weren't that color. In L. Frank Baum's book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, published in 1900, Dorothy's magic shoes were made of precious metal, silver. In Baum's book, one of the Munchkins tells Dorothy, "The Witch of the East was proud of those silver shoes, and there is some charm connected with them, but what it is, we never knew." We never knew either, because the silver shoes were never seen on the silver screen. The Wizard of Oz was big in every Hollywood sense of the word. Louis B. Mayer spent $3 million to produce a movie using Kodak's new Technicolor film. He wasn't going to settle for black and white shoes. In 1938, MGM assigned a studio scriptwriter named Noel Langley to adapt the children's story to the screen. Langley faced many challenges in the work, including what to do about the color of Dorothy's shoes. Sometime between May 14th and June 4th of 1938, the first and last recorded revisions made on this Oz script, a Hollywood decision was made. Page 26, scene number 113. When Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, waves her wand, and the shoes belonging to the recently squished Wicked Witch of the East magically appear on the feet of unsuspecting Dorothy. Here, the typed word silver was scratched out and ruby written in. By the stroke of the screenwriter's hand, Dorothy Gale's silver shoes became Judy Garland's ruby slippers. What the screenwriter didn't know was that the shoes he created would assume a unique and powerful charm of their own. Everyone knows what the ruby slippers are, but few people know what they actually look like. When MGM celebrated the 50th anniversary of the movie in 1989, the Franklin Mint created an authorized Dorothy doll, said to be completely authentic, right down to the ruby slippers. Unfortunately, they forgot the bows. But coincidentally, the first design for the ruby slippers didn't have bows either. MGM production number 1060 began in the summer of 1938. Among many who worked on the film was Gilbert Adrian. Known best by his surname, Adrian was one of the world's premier fashion designers in the 1930s. Like other great artists, he came to Hollywood during the Depression. At MGM, he designed some of the most famous gowns in movie history. For The Wizard of Oz, Adrian created hundreds of magnificent costumes, including those for the Munchkins. These took most of his time. Almost incidental were the ruby slippers, which actually evolved from one design to another. Several different looks were tested. The initial design had no bows.